Have you ever wondered if you're truly ready to buy a house and stop renting? We are going to deep dive into that today with my friend and colleague Molly Zimmerman from Bell Bank Mortgage. We're also going to review the real estate data for both the buy and sell side, really honing in on Wright County, but we'll talk about the Twin Cities as well. I'm Erica Carlson. I'm with a boutique brokerage called Bricks Real Estate. I help people sell real estate all over the Twin Cities, and I specialize in the Western Metro. If there's any questions I can answer for you during this video or otherwise, you can click the link and choose the first option to pick a time that works best for you. If you learned anything new today, I'd love for you to join my growing channel. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I would love to have you join along if this kind of information is of interest to you. This download for the Smart Home Buyer book is available on my website. I will not know you're downloading it. There's no login or anything. I give this to everybody I first meet. The first page really hits the nail on the head about talking about the right tools and right techniques. And then it jumps to the 2 ways to buy a house. And so I'm going to just summarize it quickly, which is the surgical approach is like the way we consider at Bricks the best way to buy a house, meaning we're taking our time, we're planning, we're thinking in advance about what our wants and needs are in a house. We know where the money's coming from, the financing piece. So we probably worked with our loan officer, or we're working on getting a proof of funds for cash. And then the other approach, and if I'm being honest, a lot of people prefer this, it's the shotgun approach, meaning I saw a house, I want to see it, let's go. I'll figure out everything else later. And the renters, you feel the same pressure because you know the lease is going to run up at some point, and how do I time that out? So in a previous video, we had just recently talked about, we can't really start this too early. I mean, but if you give us a call a year, 6 months in advance, it's honestly, it's not too soon. We would rather be counseling and helping you figure out these decisions before it all kind of comes down too quick and then bad decisions are made, because that's exactly our job, is to counsel you through to not have hiccups. We know how expensive this is. We know what a big decision this is in terms of your lifestyle, and that this is a new chapter. It is a really big deal. We respect that. But the only way we can help is by being let in. And not having that fear of like what we have to share with you is going to get in the way of your goals. In fact, it should be the opposite. What we're sharing with you should be opening that door and making it possible so we can catch things in advance. So when is it the right time? Well, my answer, since I'm kind of babbling here for a moment, is there's no right or wrong, but it is about you. There is going to be better times of the year to buy in terms of less competition, maybe less opportunity to be in multiple offers and sort of fighting for the house. I kind of hate saying it that way, but it's true. So there, we can definitely talk about those things. But of course there's other components. So Molly, when you hear this question, what do you think of when someone's ready to buy a house?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think first of all, I agree with Erica's approach that, the surgical method, I think, is hands down the best route that you can possibly go down if you're thinking about purchasing. The reason I think that way is because, I mean, things that I guess allow you to be ready to purchase a home. I mean, you want to look at your credit score. We want time to take a look at your credit score, make sure that it's a healthy score. We want to make sure that your debts are manageable. I think that's a big thing. Looking at stability of your job, your income. Do you have money saved up to purchase a house? The sooner that I can meet with a buyer and talk about these things, the better game plan that I can put them on. I think the last video we also touched on, from a credit standpoint, like what if I can do something to help you get a better credit score so that when you're ready to buy, you're getting a better loan product or a better interest rate. You might qualify for more of a house. It gives us time to have conversations about numbers. I mean, the most important things to know when you're purchasing a property are how much money do I need at at the closing table, and what is my monthly payment going to be?
Yes.
So if I'm working with a renter, I might say, well, what's your rent right now? Let's say it's $1,800 a month. What is your comfortable housing payment? They might tell me $2,400. My suggestion is then for the next handful of months while you're prepping to buy, take that extra, amount of money, $600, put it aside into a savings account. Act like you're making a mortgage payment. That gives you time to make sure that that's going to fit within your budget, that mortgage payment is going to work once you get into that property. But then it's also going to help you save up more money. So when you buy, you've got more of a slush fund. So I do think like taking the time and diving in, educating buyers is by far going to give you that comfort level that you need when you buy. And you're going to maybe avoid having like that huge roller coaster of emotions. Like when you make a really quick decision and you're like, what did I just do? Like, and then it's overwhelming, you know, but you kind of know what you're getting into before you start shopping.
It's really hard to explain this to somebody who hasn't been through it before, but you find the perfect house and you haven't talked to a loan officer yet. And now you might get hit with, we need to improve your credit. We can't qualify you for quite this amount. Or what we're happening lately due to current interest rates, if I can be blunt, is there's sticker shock. There's a misunderstanding of with the taxes, if you're getting something with an association like a townhouse or a condo, we have to include that quantity of money into the overall payment. So, you know, whether, and I know we've kind of oriented this towards probably people who don't already own a house, but if you do and you're still listening to us, we need to consider that, because if you're at a lower interest rate and now you're getting a different one, you may not realize that you're going up. Even if you think it's a lateral move in terms of the property, it might still be a more expensive payment than you're predicting. So why not get ahead of all of these things so we can make the right decisions? And I am going to share a little thing I do share with everybody, because I think this is kind of a natural way to insert it. There, of course, there's no perfect house, but I'm going to use the word perfect in a loose sense. If I want, or if I find the perfect house in the perfect location, not what's my perfect budget, because obviously the answer is zero. Nobody wants to pay for anything. That's a given. But in real world, if I said this is a great house in a great location for you, what would that payment look like? And the problem I've noticed, just kind of speaking very broadly, is a lot of people, especially people who've never purchased a house before, typically want to answer less than what they're paying in rent. And I totally get the answer, because again, if you're already feeling stretched, why would you want to be stretched more? Because we always have money. We always want to have money for other things in our life. But thinking this through before you talk to the professionals will put you 10,000 steps ahead of most people. Because when you answer that question, you've sat down, pen to paper, figured out your budget for your lifestyle, you've got a car payment, maybe you got student loan debt, et cetera, et cetera. Because, you know, there's only, you know, Molly, I'm sure you talk to people about that, but at the end of the day, that isn't quite our job, is not to be the financial planners in that aspect. But if you can figure out, yes, I can do X, Y, Z, if it's the perfect place in the perfect location, that doesn't mean we're going to spend that. But now when you talk to someone like Molly, the conversation's going better because you already figured out behind the scenes, I'm willing to go up to 2,500. Now it's going to have to be amazing, but there's my budget. And of course, our goal will be to try to shift you below that. But we need to know where the max is, because it's really hard to shop for a house when you're saying, well, I don't want to pay anything. I know I'm being kind of silly when I say that, but maybe that doesn't exist. I mean, that's typically the problem, is the payment needs to match the reality of like where houses are. And when you go from renting to buying, it typically is more expensive. And I know people don't want to hear that, but that is the reality of, and that's not if something breaks, and that, you know, that's not including your down payment. I'm talking about just the monthly payment without utilities. You do need to prepare yourself is probably up and beyond your current rent.
Right. Well, and I think that's like, you know, just imagine, like I try to imagine myself as a buyer, because I know the first property I purchased, it was like this roller coaster of emotions. I mean, it's scary. It's a big life decision to make. But imagine that if you're walking into a house, you absolutely fall in love with it, and then you want to make an offer, but you see the numbers and you're like, wow, that's way out of my price point.
Yes.
You have now set yourself up to fall in love with maybe a property that is not within reach right now. But
Right.
if you can sit down with a lender, one thing that I do with my buyers is, I mean, I know we're in busy season and there's a lot of my buyers are looking at properties on the weekend. So we connect Thursday, Friday. I'll ask, what houses are you looking at this weekend? Can I send you numbers? Can I send you a pre-approval letter? That way they're able to digest that information before they're even looking at a house. It's a lot more proactive versus being reactive. And then if we need to play around with the numbers a little bit and say, you know, this one we might have to offer a little bit more than list, we can kind of get that information set up before you're even walking into a house. And it's a lot less stressful. I mean, just think of how you would feel if you knew the numbers and then fell in love with a house versus having it be the other way around, you're going to have a lot of anxiety of not knowing what this might look like.
Well,
So
honestly, that reminds me of car shopping. The last time I went car shopping, I just thought it was bizarre that they wanted me to work on the financing after I picked the car. I was like, why are we doing it this way? And I think maybe that's a part of the problem is different industries work differently. And so while car, dealerships may let you test drive and dream, and of course, as a woman, they always say, what color do you want? But it's like, okay, so I want the red one, but what does it matter if I don't feel like I can afford this with the interest rates? Because cars are similar in that respect as we're typically getting some sort of loan. But the difference is we really do want you to reverse it. Like a very well practiced way to do this, again, that surgical approach is to say, what is my budget before I talk to anybody? Now let's talk to somebody. Now let's get the reality of the numbers. Because one thing that always, I don't want to say it's a red flag because that's too strong a word, but if you say, I can go to 300K, I have to ask, where did you come up with that? Did a loan officer help you move into that number? Were you playing with like a mortgage calculator on your phone? Fine. What numbers were you punching in? Was it the interest rate we're currently at? Are you considering the appropriate insurance amount? Are you a first-time home buyer? Yada, yada. So we got to be careful about where we're coming up with that number. We want to make sure that number is correct. Because of course I need to know your max to set a house search, but it always feels a little invasive where it's like, well, where did you come up with 300K? It's like I'm questioning the person, and I don't mean it to be that way, but again, why would we shop for 300K if we're at 250? Well, we're shopping in my world, that house can be a very different type of house at 250 versus 300. And anybody watching this who's shopping in that price range knows that I'm talking about that 25K difference at that price point can be a significantly different type of property. So we want to make sure we get that correct. Is there anything else we didn't touch on today?
yeah, I mean, I think it's also just kind of remembering, I think we touched on this previously, but like you're approved for a maximum payment, and keep in mind that, a house, it might be listed at 300, but you might have different expenses. You might have double the property taxes on one and maybe even HOA fee on top of it. So, I mean, you might have a very different looking payment. So I would just encourage you that if you are not working with a lender who is willing to give you estimates up front, you might want to rethink your decision, quite frankly, because I think any good lender, and there's a lot of them out there, they're going to be able to provide that information to you before you submit an offer. You need to know your numbers, and you have every right to know those numbers. So just ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we covered probably a lot more ground than we even anticipated, but I hope that people found some value from it. If you're curious to talk about these things more with us, our information is in the link, and we're happy to just chat. It doesn't have to equal buying a house or agreeing to work with each other. It can just be a discovery call, which we're happy to do at any time. Thank you so much, Molly. Have a great week.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Overall, I did look at how things compared to this time last year. And overall, the biggest change, and obviously I could scroll up here and show you, but is the pending data is the thing that jumps out the most is the difference from last year. And so that tells me that our buyer pool is just not quite the same as it was. So I don't know if it's the interest rates. I don't know if there's other factors that are playing into it, but it's nothing to be concerned about. But it is interesting to see changes year over year. Backing up, it's May 29th. We're coming out of Memorial Day weekend. Hard to always know how these holidays are going to impact buyer activity, right? Some sellers will purposely not list their house right before a weekend like this, or even like a Mother's Day or a Father's Day, because a lot of people do go out of town, and it feels like, well, why not just wait one more week? So I didn't know how that was going to affect buyers. Of course, it's a little hard to just see in this little screen I have exactly how that plays out. But overall, the inventory hasn't changed much in terms of overall actives, but do notice that 433, 441, 450, these are non-contingent options. So we've got numbers rising week over week in terms of options. Again, 502 is without any sort of contingencies for active properties in Wright County. 450 would represent the ones that don't have any contingencies. So there's choice out there for you. And I've said this a million times. If you're shopping, you might not feel like 450 is an option because obviously a lot of those you could take out because of price point or location or a myriad of other factors. Again, looking at trends, we just keep going up on pendings. So that means people are going under contract. And then in terms of closings, though, it's going the other way. And so that makes me wonder if this is the sign that we are going from a spring market to a summer market. And this is the time that we define the difference between spring and summer, and not in terms of like the way the weather, science would define it, but in terms of our real estate market, the Memorial Day weekend generally defines the difference between it, coming to an end, right? So in terms of showings per week per listing, this is the 250 to 500K range. We have seen a slowing from the week before. Again, not surprising, Memorial Day. It'll be interesting to see if the following week bumps back up or this is just how it's going to be. Because as you're looking back at just the Wright County, 2.9 up to 4.2 down to 3.1. I mean, we don't expect these numbers to stay consistent week over week, but it there's this bouncing, but hovering around the 2s and 3s. What this means to you if you're a seller, 2 to 3 showings a week is pretty average in Wright County. Now if you're in Hennepin, it's more like 4.1. And notice this is a big decrease in this little microcosm of data of, we were at 6.5, 6.2, 5.6, and now we've dropped to 4.1. Again, is that Memorial Day? Is it something else? Is it a trend, again, that we're going from spring to summer? So are we going to see less buyers being interested in purchasing property? Yes, typically, if we're looking at trends over time, summer just doesn't drive the same amount of traffic for house shopping as spring does. So if you're a seller, keep that in mind, that there are definitely still buyers out there. Real estate sells all year round. Nothing to be worried about there. In terms of pricing your property, you're going to want to be extremely careful instead of pricing high and then having to chase down that number to catch your buyers. Be cognizant that what people were selling for in the last 3 months might not quite be the numbers that we're going to sell for in the summer. Now, I'm not talking about radical number shifts. I could pull it up on my screen, but just to save time, overall, Wright County is increasing gently. The value of our properties is going up. So there's nothing to be worried about there. But in terms of showing activity, again, if you're talking to a neighbor and they just sold and they said it was crazy, we are still seeing multiple offers. That's not unusual. Houses that are priced correctly, houses that look really good when you come in, very clean. Things are, it doesn't have to be staged, just looking good. It's got a clean aesthetic. Don't buy a new couch or anything like that to sell your house. But just food for thought on that. So 2 showings per week is about average for Wright and 4 for Hennepin. So you see a difference there. And then days on market, it looks like it's speeding up when you look at my map here. So last week it was a little bit slower. This week it picked up. But again, you're going to see my data jumping all over the place because I only use pendings, meaning I only use the houses that are actually going under contract. So 12 is the median days and 23 is average. I mean, couple weeks, a month is kind of what you should expect your house to sell for. It'll be interesting to see once we're past this holiday weekend, how these numbers continue to change for the sellers and buyers. And I do hope that that is helpful.
If you think of anything that you'd like to discuss, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can just click that link, or you can go directly to my website if you want to learn more about how I help people in the Twin Cities buy and sell residential real estate. Have a fantastic week.